The Villager newspaper has kept us abreast of who's who and what's what in East Austin for 20 years now. Located on Rosewood Avenue at San Bernard Street, the Villager newspaper has a panoramic view of what's happening on the east side.
Well, I think when you're doing something that you enjoy doing, you're automatically motivated, I think.
What role do you see the Villager playing in the African American community especially?
Well, I think our goal has always been to be a communication device for the community. And we look at the Villager as a means of the community talking to itself. Politics is kind of our forte. We enjoy that. We think it's important. And there's right people be involved in politics, so we want to make sure those people get elected.
Right.
We do 6,000 papers per week, and we estimate we have about 15 to 18,000 readers on a weekly basis.
We'd like to see how you lay the paper out and take a look at what goes on in making this be the final product here.
Okay. Well, the person responsible for that is Bobby Hall, who's our managing editor, and I'm sure she'll be happy to assist you in showing how the layout is done.
All right, well, let's go and take a tour.
All right.
This particular page right here is our Youth Brigade page, and as Mr. Wyatt was saying, we have students that write from the Austin Independent School District schools, and so people have bought sponsorships for this particular page, and so that's all included up here in its masthead.
So this will be the front page where Mr. Wyatt is with his column called Rapping?
Yes.
Okay.
This will be Mr. Wyatt.
Okay.
Big hit.
From 1973 to 1993, Tommy Wyatt and the Villager newspaper.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Point Blank, Texas, San Jacinto County.
And do you happen to know how your family came to live there? Like how the family originated?
That was my father's home.
So he originally was from...
He lived there. And then when he married my mother, she went there with him. And I was born there.
So were you born in a house?
I have no idea, sweetheart. I wasn't born in a house. I was told I was born by a traveling nurse, whatever they have in the country. It's out in the country, you know. So yeah, I guess I was in a house, but not in the hospital or anything. You know, nurse do home visits, private nurses and home visits.
So do you have any siblings that are still with us?
No.
And how many was it of you all?
3.
Were they brothers, sisters?
They were brothers. I had 2 brothers. One, my mother had 2 kids for my father, and she had one by another husband.
And do you have like an early childhood memory of being around them?
Well, my brother that lived in Point Blank, I never saw him until he was 16 years old, almost 18 years old, because my mother left Point Blank when I was 6 months old, and she left him there. My father, she took me because I was a baby. And my older brother was physically handicapped, and he lived with my grandmother.
Okay. So, who were your childhood heroes?
What?
Did you have any childhood heroes? Or people you looked up to?
You go from my birthday to how heroes. I mean, how old are you talking about? When?
I would say like about the age of 8 or 9.
I didn't have a childhood hero at 8 and 9.
Okay. Did y'all go to church?
My grandmother was a strong member of the Church of God in Christ. So when we left Point Blank, we moved back in with her, with my grandmother. And she went to church twice during the week and 3 times on Sundays.
So you had a good relationship with your grandparents, your grandmother, and your grandfather?
No. I never said anything about my grandfather. I never knew my grandfather until I was fully grown and out of college. I was married when I met my grandfather.
And do you remember where they were from?
Point Blank, Texas, San Jacinto County.
Oh, okay, San Jacinto County. So what was your education like as a child? Like, I would say from 8, like, do you remember what school you went to?
I don't remember the name of school, but at age 8, I was in Stanford, Texas, and I was going to a junior high school. I don't remember the name of it.
And do you remember what high school you graduated from?
I graduated from Paul Dunbar High School in Lubbock, Texas.
And how did you get from Stanford to Lubbock? How did your family?
In a car.
So they had cars back then?
Yes.
So do you remember the year, perhaps?
I moved to Lubbock when I was in 9th grade. I don't remember what year they were. I can pick it up. But I was in 9th grade when I moved to Lubbock.
In your opinion, how is the world today different from what it was like when you were an adolescent growing up? I guess I would say to like maybe the age of 16.
16 or adolescent, that's teenager.
I'm saying in between that time, like if you look at that era, those eras of your life, how is the world different today versus when you were growing up?
100%.
100% what?
Different.
Oh God. Okay.
Well, you gotta remember, when I was 8, we were in a totally segregated society. So it's different, you know what I mean? So you gotta be more specific, but we were totally integrated. I mean, black folk live on one side of town, and white folk live on the other side of town. And it remained that way until the early 60s.
From high school, you went immediately into college?
Yes.
And what school was that?
Bishop College, Marshall, Texas.
And what was your major?
My major was, I started out as an accountant major, but I ended up with a degree in business.
And is that what you really wanted, was a degree in business?
No, I wanted a degree in accounting. But what happened when I went in, there was only 3 of us who chose to do accounting majors. And by the time I got to be in my senior year, 2 of those guys had dropped out. And it was a small college, so the president said he couldn't afford to have a whole class for one student. And so I had switched majors, but they did give me I was on a football scholarship, and my job was off season was working in the business office with the college accountant.
From high school, well, I would say from high school and college, what school did you graduate from in regards to your collegiate career?
I graduated from Bishop College.
Bishop College, while you were there, what was the first industry that you got into as far as your professional life? Career?
After I graduated?
Mm-hmm.
I went to work for an insurance company, and I was in training to be a staff manager.
And how long did you work for that company? Could you give us the name?
Atlanta Life, the Atlanta Life Insurance Company out of Atlanta, Georgia.
And they were based in Texas at the time?
No.
Or did you go to Atlanta?
They were based in Atlanta, Georgia, but they had offices all over the country. It really was one of the largest black-owned insurance companies at the time in America. And they had an office in Lubbock. That's why I graduated from high school, and I knew the people in Lubbock. And what they told me, when I graduated, they invited me to come back and take a job with that company.
And during that time, were a lot of African American people migrating to that career field as far as insurance?
That was one of the largest black businesses they had in the country. But there were a number of insurance agents. Atlanta Life was just one of the many. You had Atlanta Life, you had Golden State Mutual, you had 8 or 10 at the time. There were large insurance companies, and they were really primary hires of college graduates. We remember again, we are in segregated America. You see, so those companies had a base because they serviced the black community and all the needs that we had, and so they supplied the insurance needs, because white insurance companies would not insure black people.
And do you remember like the time span?
Many times
Like not early 60s, or late 50s?
Well, I mean that went on until.
No, I'm saying as far as you working for this particular company.
Oh, that's what we thought. The insurance company. Well, what happened was I went to work. When I got out, I didn't actually go to work in Lubbock. They had a program called the they would do training for young men, and they would hire you and send you on what they call a special team, and they would send you around to different companies in the country to see how each one of those companies operated in their environment in different cities. And so I joined the special team, and again, I graduated in 1960, and at that time, America had a draft program for the military. Okay, and if you were not in college, you immediately went at the head of the draft list, be available for the draft. Okay, and so when I graduated, I had to go register to my draft board, and then they offered me this job. They didn't have a job in Lubbock for me to work, so they offered me a position on the special team where we would travel around until they found an opening, and then they would place you wherever. And I joined the special team, and so I traveled. But I only had a little while because when I went to my draft board, they said I'd be drafted. I got out of college in June and said I'd be drafted by September.
Did you end up going to Vietnam?
No, that's way ahead.
That's way ahead. I'm
way
sorry.
Ahead, no, that was kind of what they call a Cold War period. I was drafted,
Okay.
but that was no active war going on at the time.
So after World War II, like then Cold War, pretty much.
Yeah, it's called a Cold War period. Yeah.
Okay, so
Vietnam came much later.
were you drafted for Vietnam though? No.
No. See, they didn't. I was drafted to be in the Army, and they situated they wanted to, and I went to basic training, but I was drafted to be a rifle carrying soldier.
Did you feel like you were forced to be in the Army?
I was forced. I mean, that was the time.
Okay.
That was the time. If you were, as I said, if you were not in college, you know, they give you a extension. If you were not in college, then you were on the draft list, and when they call your number, you were forced to go. Yeah, that was the law.
So I know this was segregated times, so I'm gonna move up a little bit to the Civil Rights Act. Do you remember where you were the day that bill was signed?
I have no idea, but that's a long time ago.
How
you move way up.
It was just like about 5 years, 5 or 6 years.
It's more than that. But go ahead.
So
you said when it was signed. I mean, the civil rights movement went on longer than 4, 5, 6 years. You see what I mean? But, so it was a long time before it got signed. Lyndon Johnson signed the bill, but there was a long time. That's what you're talking about.
So I'm looking at 1960 to 1964.
Okay. But the civil rights movement been going longer than 4 years.
I'm just speaking about that bill in particular, just like that specific bill.
That was a combination of civil rights movement, not the beginning. It was longer than 4 years. I mean, I don't understand you. Go ahead.
During that time, from the 1960s up until, and I'll just ask you in general, do you feel like you ever experienced racism? Like, did you ever see it for yourself in regards to someone presenting it to you?
Prior to signing the Civil Rights Bill, we all felt racism because that was restriction on what black folks could do in this country. You know, you couldn't go downtown and eat a what they call a lunch counter, if you remember correctly, you know, more than 5 years ago. I mean, the first movement started with these students sitting at lunch counters. You know, now we're talking about way back in the late 50s.
Right.
You know, and that's how it started up. You know, and they were arrested, put in jail. You know, when I was going to school at Bishop, we had the same problem in the city where I lived in Marshall, Texas. We could not go downtown and set a lunch counter, but we did. And many of those students were arrested and put in jail. But then ACP had formed a program where they would go, if you got arrested for doing civil rights activities, they would get you out of jail. Then National and ACP would do that. So yeah, that was discrimination all over the place. If you went in a department store in the city as a lady and wanted to buy a dress, you couldn't try it on before you bought it. That's the way it was. And then you had separate waiting room. You had, everything was separate. You see.
When did you decide to take a different route in your career, or when did you decide to move from Lubbock? So which one happened first?
I left Lubbock and I was in the military, so that was no longer my home. When I got discharged from the military, I stayed in the Army 2 years. When I got discharged from the military, I came back to Lubbock, but that's when the Atlanta Light put me on a special team, and I started moving around the country, visiting the company offices in different areas. I think my first time was in St. Louis, Missouri. I had spent much time out of Texas, except for a short time I was in the Army, so I was anxious to go travel and see the world.
And did you get to see the world?
Not that time. I mean, I have eventually got to see it, but we talking about when I got out of the military. I was 22 years old, anxious to see the world. Yeah. So, and I started out, actually, my first assignment with Atlanta Life was back in Marshall, Texas, and that's where our training was for that month or so. We worked in Marshall, Texas, and I was placed in the same dormitory where I lived when 4 years I was in college.
And just to go back just a little bit, just this one moment in time in your collegiate career, you pledged what again?
Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity.
Okay. With the insurance company, was it a black insurance company?
Yes.
Okay.
Atlanta Life Insurance Company, and there was a number of black insurance. As I said earlier, a number of black insurance companies in the country. Those were the largest businesses that black folks owned back in those days were insurance companies, and it was that way because white insurance companies would not insure black folks at a reasonable price. They didn't really want to insure them at all. So these black insurance companies formed to fill that void.
And this was for what type of insurance?
Whatever kind of insurance you needed.
And
Life, health, automobile, homeowners, whatever.
How long did you stay in the position?
Which position?
As far as being a part of administration.
I wasn't part of administration. What happened was,
being a staff.
after I came back, after I got out of the military and came back, I was no longer eligible for the special team because they had another group that they were using for the special team. So they assigned me that's how I got to Austin, because that's the only place they had an opening at the time I came back, and so they assigned me to Austin. That was 1962.
And how did you view Austin when you first got here? Did you like it?
Well, it takes the time for you to determine. You can't do that when you first get here.
It depends on who you are.
Huh? No, I don't care who you are. You can't determine where you like a place and not like a place until you've been there for a while. You just can't walk in because you're not giving the place a fair shot. You just walk in and say, I don't like the place. I've been there 2 days. No, I did a lot of things in Austin before I liked. Anyway, I came back and I was assigned to the local agency here as a staff manager, and I had a staff of 7 people that worked upon me. And
how long did you end up being with Atlanta, with this insurance company?
I was with Atlanta Life for about, I don't know exactly, 4 or 5 years. And then I went in business with a fraternity brother of mine who was an older gentleman and political and community activist. He had an insurance agency, but he worked for another company. He worked for Golden State Mutual. And so he asked me to come in and join him, and we formed a partnership with his agency. And that was local Golden State Mutual office in Austin.
When did you know that you wanted to be a publisher? Did you just wake up
No.
and decide to?
No.
How did that come about in your life? going from being with the insurance company to now dealing with newspapers?
That's a pretty long process, but what happened after I went into business with Andy Anderson, was my partner. We operated that insurance agency together for about 5 years, and after that point, he was much older man than me, and he had decided that he didn't want to invest any more money into that insurance agency that he had, and so he what can I say? He transferred it back, the insurance company back to the national office. Now, Gold State Mutual's home office was in Los Angeles, California. So he transferred all of his rights back to them, and then they assigned everything back to me as a general contractor. So we were no longer partners, but I had the agency that we had was assigned to me in totality.
And so at the beginnings of the newspaper, were you just a one-man show?
You jumping ahead from the newspaper? No. I operated that insurance agency, and I incorporated not only life and health insurance, but I incorporated automobile insurance and all this into that. You see, and that was when I came to Austin. That was a black newspaper in town that I used a lot in order to learn about the city, who was what, you know.
Do you remember the name of the paper?
Yeah, Capital City, the capital city, Argus.
Okay, which is still here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
On a limited basis, they're not publishing regularly like they were at the time, or like we do, but they're still here. Yeah.
Was that the main newspaper at the time for Austin, as far as for African American people?
Yes.
Okay.
African American people. That was the main newspaper. Mm-hmm.
And was it pretty informative?
Well, they thought so. I mean, that's why they operated. I thought so. That's why I read it. That's how I learned about Austin. As I said, I learned about the people. I mean, it's much the same thing that we have. You know, wrote about the activities in Austin, who, what was what. Yes.
And so
what happened was, to get back to your question, was I would have a little. They had students who delivered papers for them, and you know, and the paper was like something like between 10, 25 cents, you know, at the time. And so we had students who come over every week and bring me the paper, and I'd pay him, you know. But then the lady who was running the paper had a heart attack playing bridge one night and died suddenly of a heart attack. And so since that time, after that time, she didn't own the paper, but she was working for some other people, and they decided to take take the paper in another direction. And so I didn't find it informative anymore, and me and a couple of friends of mine, we went in and offered our services to help take it back to the area that we thought the community was most interested in, and the owners did not think that was what they wanted to do. And so, actually, at that time I had gotten married, and my wife was producing a magazine called the Black Registry. It was a telephone directory of black-owned and managed businesses in the city of Austin. So when somebody came to town and they wanted to find a new person in town, wanted to find a service, they could go to the Black Registry and find anything from restaurants to barber shops, beauty shops, cafeterias, whatever, you know. And so she was running the magazine, but she was running it out of my office. And so during that time, the people who put their ads in that Black Register said, you know, this is great, but they wanted the place to advertise like the Cap City Argus. It was no longer available to them. So that's how we started the newspaper. And what I did, it was a couple of people, a man and his wife who worked for her doing the Black Registry, and they decided that they would help with a newspaper. We wanted to start one. Came the fact though, the lady that did that, her father was the dean of journalism at University of Texas, and she was a graduate of University of Texas School of Journalism. So they were the one that took over and helped me put that paper together, put it online, and keep it going.
Since that time until where you are at this moment, how do you see black journalism from when you began to where you are today? Do you think it is still taken seriously?
Yes. It's taken seriously because I belong to an organization called the National Newspaper Publishers Association, which is a conglomerate of all the black newspapers in the country, which is about 400 newspapers. You see, that's our organization, yeah. And so we operate the same way that daily papers operate, except most daily papers, white-owned papers were, like I said, individually owned. They didn't really cooperate with each other for the most part. And so what we did, because the black media was the only place you could get the really positive news about the black community, was through those newspapers. And so what the NNPA does is try to help those newspapers be as strong as they possibly can, in order to disseminate the information and carry the movement on.
What impact do you think your newspaper has had in Austin for over 50 years?
What impact? I don't know.
Or does it?
I don't know. I mean, I think we did a job that we were set up to do. That is to report the positive news about our community, and other facts that you can't find anywhere except in the black newspaper. Daily papers don't cover it. Daily papers were very known for putting the bad news about us in their papers and putting it on the front page. The good news about our community went on page 40 or 50, wherever as far in the back as they could get it. You know what I mean? And so it was up to the black newspapers to bring the positive influence, and most of the movements that went on in this country was actually assisted with by the black newspapers. To get the information out, you need a resource, and you couldn't publish the marches downtown, through the white newspaper. If it did, the only thing to cover was the cops with sticks out there beating you down. You see what I mean? But most of the information is still today, and so we get calls every day like, how long y'all think you'll be around? I think you asked me that question. I have no idea. As long as we're needed, we'll be around. It's been over 100 years now. We're still here.
If you had advice for someone who wants to start a newspaper today, a print newspaper, what would your advice be to them?
My advice would be the same to them, the same as me. You need to research it. You see, because it's a very expensive operation. Number one, you see, and you need to find, just like you do any other business, you need to research it to find out what the pros and cons are about it. It might sound like a great occupation or a great business to have, but if you don't know anything about it, you could get in real serious trouble because they're very expensive.
How did you come up with the name Rapping Tommy Wyatt?
My column?
Your column.
Well, back in the day when I was a young man, rapping was not singing. It was just talking. And so, it was a belief that if your rap was right, you could get it the moment you wanted. And so we all practiced being rapping. You know what I mean? Just, this may not be good to go on the thing, but the thing about it, you need to learn how to talk a woman out of her clothes. Talk her, man. Yeah. You never heard that, have you?
Yes, I have.
And so that's what I know by. So when the Capitol of August, before they banned it, I was writing a column for them, and I was calling rapping Tommy Wyatt, and then when it went out, the new owners came in that was not interested in that column, so I didn't do it that. But as soon as I came out, and there's another thing about it, when I came out with my paper, I joined. I was first in the city to join several previously white-owned organizations, and one of those was the go away. Anyway, it was Junior Chamber of Commerce, and they called them the JCs, you know. And these were young men who worked for all the major companies in town, but who were expected to be the leaders of tomorrow, okay? And so you had Chamber of Commerce, but these were the young executives that they brought in to train them. But what they did, they gave them their own organization that they could go in with different ideas that they had, and as young men, you know what I mean, and bring it along. And so when I came in, I was invited. I met a young man who was in that organization, and who's a lawyer, and he invited me to join. And so he said, I don't understand why, but I've invited several, you know, black men to join, and they would not, because, and I understood it. And I said, okay. So he said, let me turn your name in, and you got to wake up. Want to sleep on me or what? No. Or you keep flooding your house. And so he said, let me turn your name in. And he did. He turned my name in. At that time, of course, I was pretty popular with the insurance agency. And the night that my application was accepted, 4 members of the board of directors resigned.
So, did you, experience backlash when you started the paper from the white community?
Backlash?
As far as starting a black newspaper?
No, they had seen black newspaper before. I wasn't the first. What do you mean black?
So did they support you?
Who?
The white community.
Well, I wasn't interested in the white community support per se. I was interested in the black folks support me. See what you got to remember, we were a self-contained community. You know,
and you're speaking of East Austin right now. Are you talking about? No,
I'm not talking about East Austin. I'm talking about black folks.
Okay.
We're a self-contained community. Whatever we needed, we had to provide it for ourselves. So we had outstanding business people. We had carpenters, plumbers, subcontractors, restaurant owners. Electricians. The whole thing. Whatever they had, we had. Except we had to operate in our community. You see. So what I needed was support of those businesses, you know, in order to get that message out, because you know, if people don't, your service is no good if nobody knows you have it. You see, and so that's what we were after. We were not concerned about them. We wanted to make sure that our community thought we could provide a service for them, and that's how I got into it, because we did it with that telephone directory, the Black Register, But those businesses saying, we love this idea, but I need to get a message out to the community more often than once a year. You see, because register was just once a year. We updated once a year. You know, because if I'm selling, you know, hot dogs, sandwiches, you know, I need to be able to tell people I got hot dog sandwiches. So that's what we were after. We were concerned about getting the support of our community and the community businesses. You know, but they had to spend advertising, don't understand the need of advertising in our newspaper.
And can you explain to the audience what NNPA means, the acronyms?
I did a minute ago.
I'm saying, what is the organization about?
National Newspaper Publishers Association.
And it's an organization that is specifically for African American newspapers?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been a member?
Almost. Ever since I've been in business, probably about 40 years.
And what's the difference versus the Texas Publishers Association?
Okay, well, Texas Publishers Association those same members, but the ones who operate in Texas, and so we have our organization so we can, because every state, as you know, have different kinds of, they operate differently, you know, and their products are different. They're a whole bunch of things. You see, so Texas Public Association, well, we can get on the same page in order to be of assistance to each other, you know, in promoting our papers together. Like, for instance, Beto O'Rourke. When Beto O'Rourke ran for senator, you know, we met with him. We would meet those statewide politicians like that and say, hey, you know, let us help with your campaign. You see, so when you advertise, you just can't advertise because you're from El Paso. El Paso can't elect you if you're running for the state of Texas. So we had a meeting with him, and all the publics from Texas came together. He came in and sat with us, you know, and we told him how we could be of service to him. He advertised with all of our papers, you know, and most of the time, if you run for statewide office, you need to do that. You just can't advertise in one city, in the city where you live, you know. And so but a lot of times people don't know that you have this network that because they can serve you all over the state.
If you can answer this question, I think the audience will probably want to know. So, in the late 1960s, if you remember this, what do you think was one of the biggest issues of the paper? I mean, as far as like you publishing a piece of news in the 60s.
I don't know. I wasn't. I started in '73.
So what about the 70s?
No, what's the question again?
What would be one of the, like, when you publish the paper, what would be one of the, I guess, one of the most sought after issues?
Well, I won't say it's the most sought after, but one of the things we were trying to do was get blacks elected to public office. You know.
So you guys, did you get to meet
Dr.
Barbara Jordan? Did you get to interview her during that time period?
Well, Barbara Jordan from Houston, so she really wasn't at the time wasn't that interested in what I had to say. But she was Houston, but yeah, I met with Barbara Jordan. I talked to her, you know. But yes, getting people elected to public office, both statewide and locally. You know, we didn't have anybody on city council. We had people run for city council year after year after year, but blacks was never elected, you know. And so what we had to do was find a liberal white person on the city council to help with our issues about for city council. You see, so Burl Hancock, you've heard Burl Hancock?
Yeah.
Well, he's a black gentleman here, graduated Prairie University, worked with the IBM plan here, one of the top officers. We asked him to run for the and incidentally, IBM was one of the high-tech companies first come to town that made a demand for the city. That said unless you know what office is, well out on North Lamar, the IBM plant. Anyway, they're not big like they used to be, you know. But they told them if you want out, if you can provide how can I say it? West Austin was segregated, okay. And what they're saying, if you want to sell homes to our employees that live in that part of town, then we can't be a part. We can operate in this city. That's what got us. But okay, so then what we had to do, we had to find a candidate, black candidate, that would be acceptable to the white part of town. You see, so Burl Hancock was the highest-ranking African American at IBM at the time, and we asked him. He just got here. He didn't know anything about Austin or us, you know. But but as we met and and socialized, see, and we asked him to run, and he said, "Why me?" Then we had to explain to him that we have to have a person running that the other side of town respects. You see, and most of the people that had been running had been activists from East Austin, that just piss folks off because they were actually equal time and equal rights and all that kind of stuff. You see, and so Burl decided to let us put his name forward, and he won. He was the first African American city council member in Austin. Since Reconstruction, they had some way back in Reconstruction time, but they didn't stay long. But he was the first one since Reconstruction that was elected to our city council.
And so from that point, I would say to the 80s, what would be another moment in time you think that would be big, that was big for the paper as far as you publishing, if you remember?
I probably remember. I never looked at it in that vein. I mean, as important time for the paper. I mean, we were working with the community, and so it's not